And now we'll be moving towards the panel discussion, which I believe is very important and very crucial for us to learn from, because a lot of key ideas of what the conference will be talking about is going to be discussed. Because we will be discussing the use of AI in academia. So, without further ado, let's begin with the introductions. Introducing first is going to be our moderator for the day of this panel discussion. He is the Assistant Professor and Program Director MBA and Executive MBA at the Institute of Business Administration, Karachi. He has done his PhD from Massachusetts University and United Nations University, Netherlands in 2016. Please, everyone, a big round of applause for our moderator of the day, Dr. Mohammad Shafique. Thank you very much. Next up, we have our very own student from our student body. She is part of the student government of IBA. She is the president of the IBA student government. Please, everyone, a big round of applause for Malaika Amir. Next up, we have our very own faculty member who has had 14 years of diverse experience in wholesale risk management, corporate strategy, and asset management. He has been the CEO of the first SME guarantee company in Pakistan. He's the Chief Executive Officer at CreditBook Financial Services. I've studied with him this entire year, 2 different courses. Please, everyone, all the students, especially, a big round of applause for Sir Ammar Habib Khan. Next up, I'd like to call our very own keynote speaker who has just given us the keynote speech. Please, everyone, a big round of applause for Dr. Adam Zaremba. The next 2 panel members are someone that have already received their introductions. I personally didn't get a chance to introduce them, so I took the liberty of getting their introductions ready. So I'd like to do it again. The next up, we have a professor at DanCap, Private Equity Endowed Chair, and Department Chair at Dan Management at Western University in Canada. He has had numerous research grants, including funding councils and government departments, etc., etc. Everyone, a round of applause for Professor Geoffery Wood. Last but not the least, she is an inaugural director of the UCL Global Business School for Health. She's held a number of senior academic leadership roles at institutions around the world. She follows a passion in improving healthcare management and leadership for better health outcomes. Everyone, a big round of applause for Professor Nora Colton. Wait from my side.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to have a disclaimer maybe that being a trained academic with case teaching pedagogy, I like to walk and talk, and I find it very hard to sit in the chair and talk, right? So if you find me turning into the chair, so it would be the tension between the theory of walking the talk and then the practice of sitting and talk, right? So thank you very much to all the distinguished panelists. I welcome you all, and I hope that we will have a very fruitful discussion in the context of this conference. So largely, maybe just to provide a little context of what we are trying to do, we all know that AI is known to have a pervasive impact in all aspects of society. but what we actually don't know is that what challenges and opportunities it specifically poses to different aspects of society. And hence the theme of the conference, that AI brings many opportunities for innovation, and at the same time, wherever there is innovation, there is change and disruption, right? So there are challenges that we need to look at. So in what areas those challenges are, we are here to think about it, and that knowledge gap was to be filled supposedly by this conference, and today we will try to think together and try to look at those opportunities and challenges that this technology is going to bring about. Second, we also know that academia is at the heart of every functioning society, fundamentally because we provide the key input to all the activities and functions of the society. That is, we prepare and provide human capital, and also we provide relevant knowledge that how the society should function effectively and efficiently, right? So given that central role in the society, academia has huge responsibility, of course. So how do we define what that role should be? There could be a number of ways to think about that. So today we will be focusing largely on the stakeholder perspective. Again, we know that who the key stakeholders are. Students, represented here by Malaika. We also have, secondly, academics and teachers. All our esteemed panelists are academics as well as researchers. And then the third major stakeholder is, of course, the industry who uses the inputs that we supply, right? That is the society and industry at large. And we need to incorporate their perspective as well, that as to what challenges and opportunities they are going to have because of the emergence of this, this technology. So from the perspective of this stakeholder perspective, of course, we actually need to understand that the major output in terms of knowledge is the academic press, right? So we produce knowledge, and that knowledge is vetted, and that knowledge is published. So AI is largely thought about in terms of developing new understandings and new knowledge, and then that is published. And we have Geoffery with us, Professor Geoffery Wood. He will be informing us about how AI is actually affecting the production of knowledge and also vetting of that knowledge. From the perspective of industry and applied perspective, we have Dr. Nora Colton from health sector, and she will be informing us that how in that key sector of the society, artificial intelligence is actually influencing the functioning of the society. On the finance and investment side, we have Professor Adam, who will be informing us that how AI is going to affect the functioning of investment and finance sectors, and what does it mean for us to prepare the curriculum and disseminate those kind of skills. And finally, we also have our expert and fortunately bridging the industry and academia, Dr. Ammar Habib, who will be informing us that, you know, how we look at this bridge between academia and industry in terms of this technology. So we have a full portfolio of experts, I think, who can cover all these aspects of the stakeholders. We will be covering 3 themes. We tend to usually think about AI in terms of tools and technologies. That is the objective part of it, and that is the first theme that we will cover. Second part of the triangle is that that AI tools and techniques actually are related to certain competencies and also the ethical considerations of those competencies and applications. And we will also be touching upon those aspects. And finally, based upon these two aspects, we would also like to understand that how academia can actually benefit from the challenges and opportunities, and it means that what are the implications of these new technologies and tools and their ethical aspects and how they will be affecting our functioning. So in this context, I would now like to give the floor to my panelists, and I'll be asking the questions from them. But at the same time, I want it to be a participative conversation among us. I will not be able to take questions from every one of you, but I do expect that every one of you will have some questions for us. So at some point in the session, we will share a QR code over here. So if you have any questions or comments or observations, you can just scan that QR code and you can fill in that question and so on. And we will try to address that afterwards. And we will conclude this conference as well as this discussion with the preparation of a brief. And at least, if not for the sake of this discussion, we will incorporate your feedback and your questions in that brief that we will send to all the participants. All right, sorry for this bit of a long introduction. So to start the discussion with the panelists, I would like to ask Professor Wood that being an editor-in-chief of two prominent academic journals, how do you see AI impacting research and publishing? And how are the editors and publishers adapting to the rise of AI in the generation and dissemination of knowledge?
Firstly, the AI issue is very divisive. You get some academics, often who actually are middle-aged scholars who battling, sitting in a dry spell and the standards are getting higher, are like fiercely in favor of AI, others more skeptical. So it's very divisive. And as you know, I edit one of the AUM journals, Academy Management Journals, AMP, and I'm involved in the discussions around that, and there's no consensus as to what is the best way forward. And this is challenging from an author point of view, because on one hand you could say, well, it's a new tool, and if you don't use it, you'll be left behind. On the other hand, there are lots of ethical issues, and the danger is that if you get caught in the wrong, if there's lots of ethical concerns, what might seem okay now might not seem ethical in the future. So that's, from an author point of view, a bit of a challenge. The other thing is, and this is very difficult, on one hand, I know English grammar is very hard. English is a Germanic language, and Germanic grammar is very hard. And if you're a non-native English speaker, it's actually a huge disadvantage. I know even native English speakers who have referees throw papers back at them and saying, the referee's saying, I can see this person is not a native English speaker. I had a co-author who'd published, like, I think, 500 papers, and he'd native English speaker, and he still got that kind of comment. So I appreciate it can level the playing field. However, there are lots of factors on the other side. One is AI has got a delightful habit of making up sources, making up stuff. Secondly, it's also got a habit of lifting sentences and sentence fragments into papers. So it depends, and of course, from a journal point of view, you get Crossref, which is the journal equivalent of Turnitin. Now, depending on how an editor reads that, it can be read, well, there's only a 3% similarity to individual paper. Hey, okay. Or download the Crossref report and look at the paper then, and then you'll see the paper is a sea of purple and red. So a lot depends on how the editor reads the Crossref report, but obviously it's not good to be done for plagiarism in a major journal because they keep a record of those things. So watch out, as I said, there is that delightful habit of lifting sentences and sentence fragments. Other point is AI does tend to have a bland, non-committal writing style. Some editors see it as more of a problem than others. Of course, the other thing is it can lead to proliferation of certain things. Obviously, what would lend itself to use of AI is literature reviews. And already the market is saturated with literature reviews owing to the 3-paper PhD format. You know, PhD students typically doing a literature review for the first paper. And then, of course, the review journals or journals taking review papers are completely overloaded. And the idea of adding to the flood of review papers is obviously a concern. I don't want to talk too long. I can come back to other points, and I've got other things to say. But I can tell you lots. I can talk all day about this because there's a lot going on.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. So it means that so-called diamond cuts diamond if there is artificial intelligence being used in writing the papers or drafting the papers. Maybe we can use AI to detect that plagiarism and that foul play and things like that, right? So thank you, Professor Wood. Next, the other perspective is that of the key stakeholder. We would like to know the perspective of the students. So I would ask Ms. Malaika that as a student representative, could you please inform us, how do students perceive and use AI? How is it influencing their attitudes and practices in terms of learning, personal development, and academic performance?
Sure. So first of all, how the students view AI has a very diverse mindset, but majority of it is very positive. Because for students like me, it's a blessing in disguise. We all know how easier things have gotten after AI. So one of the few reasons from a student's perspective why AI has made things so easier for us is number one, personalized learning. So we view it as a service which can be customized according to our own needs, which is available for us all the time. And no matter what we need, if we want improvement, if we want feedback, if we want continuous guidance, we have a platform. Secondly, research and productivity. We all know in university you have to write several research papers. So initially, we used to take a lot of time to find the relevant papers, find the relevant website, find all those areas. Now, AI does all that for us. All we have to do is we know where to find the papers. We will still be reading the papers, but now the main process of streamlining the work for us, basically organizing the work for us, that's what AI is doing. So it's basically, you know, we are Gen Z, we want efficient solutions, we don't have patience. So when something is being done for us instantly, so we like going for that way. So thirdly, career development. AI is not only there to teach us technical skills, also about coding, data analytics. There's so many apps which teach you so many different languages. So basically, you're just sitting at home and you have access to a wide range of information. So that's one reason why it's viewed so positively. Speaking of learning, performance, and personal development, so I feel like the learning aspect is definitely increasing because we're getting way more exposure than before. Similarly, our performance is also increasing to some extent, as well as the personal development aspect. Out of these three, if I would say one is being impacted a bit, that would be performance. Because of increased dependence on AI. Like as a student representative, I've been dealing with hundreds of emails during my tenure. And the funniest part was when at the end of the email, under regards, the part where you say write your name, they wouldn't remove that, and the bracket would be written like enter your full name. So I feel like the dependence on AI has increased drastically. Even our day-to-day basic tasks like draft an email, write a thank you message, anything that we do. So that's one aspect where I feel like the performance is being impacted a bit. But otherwise, learning and personal development is definitely increasing.
Thank you. Great. So this means that this has some side to the ethical consideration of the application of AI by the students, and maybe the pressure for productivity could provide the inducement to use more of AI, but at the same time it has the implications for competencies, that too much reliance on AI might actually be detrimental for the personal development of the students as well. All right, thank you, that's nice. Professor Colton, coming to you. In your view, what are the key areas in healthcare education and practice that you think will be highly influenced by AI? And what are the opportunities and challenges in those areas for healthcare academics and professionals in particular?
So thank you. So AI is having a tremendous impact on the healthcare sector, and also how we educate those going into healthcare. And I think in terms of education, one of the most important areas we see, of course, is the use of simulations. And that is really important for a number of reasons, particularly if we're talking about clinically trained individuals and using it in clinical settings. The research is overwhelming that those who get more practice, whether that is, in terms of using simulations across all sorts of specializations, they then turn out to make fewer errors when they start to actually practice on, patients. So it would be hard to make a case against the use in simulations for clinicians. But I think also simulations are making a big difference for non-clinical medical professionals as well. And the same holds. We often send people in to manage in hospital settings, and hospital settings are very complex, and the different clinical pathways, the kind of procurement issues, supply chain management. So there's vast opportunities to upskill and ensure that people who are moving into those roles, again, get real practice, but don't necessarily have to do it in an organization. And why is that important? Well, if you think about most of the healthcare organizations that you're familiar with, you'll probably find that they're overwhelmed. It's become very hard, even for training clinical professionals today, to increase the number. It's not because we can't sit more clinical professionals in a lecture room. It's because we can't do the clinical placements. And often that hinges on the fact that clinics are overwhelmed. The people working in there, they don't have the bandwidth or the space to actually have interns or people who are observing or shadowing them. So if we can then achieve the same outcomes using AI through simulations, through AI, then we can increase the number of clinicians that we train up. And the same holds for managers. Many managers today in clinical or medical settings, public health, they're working and operating on a burning platform on every day. So if we come and we ask them to take on more interns, actually interns don't necessarily create more help until they have a certain level of training. And so by being able to give students and professionals more real world, as it were, training through simulations, through the use of AI, data analysis, and the more that we can do and the way that we can enhance the educational setting, it then spills over with lots of positive externalities for the professional setting. Now, where are the challenges? Well, the challenges are multiple. Partly, you need to have the right infrastructure. You have to have the right, IT infrastructure within the educational institutions and also within the clinical, areas. a lot of the clinical simulation equipment can be still very costly, okay? And because we're not operating at capacity yet and haven't really scaled, some of the machines that we'd want to use that are going to make a difference in the future, right now are driving costs up, both in terms of education settings and in terms of medical settings. So costs and infrastructure are two important challenges. Then I would say the most important challenge, though, is mindset. So we've just seen the contrast between the mindset of people who, you know, are looking to use AI as a way of increasing their publications and their productivity. We've seen students using it, but in many workplaces and even in many academic institutions, there's a real pushback. And that pushback is because there's a fear of AI. There's a fear of technology because it's moving at such a rapid pace. So for many organizations, the absorption capacity is just not there. And again, if I go back to all those hardworking, busy health professionals, they have very little bandwidth, not only to supervise students, but to absorb new technology, new innovation, and new ideas. So one of the biggest barriers then is that change management piece. The change management piece in terms of getting educators upskilled, reskilled, comfortable, and confident, because people will not teach and use in an education setting. I would argue that part of the pushback by educators around the use of AI in improving and moving forward education is because they themselves haven't been trained, they don't know the possibilities, they don't understand the practicalities. And then secondly, in a healthcare setting, those practitioners, again, they've got their processes, they feel safe, they're dealing with people's lives. So asking them to make rapid changes that create any kind of uncertainty, you're invariably going to get a pushback. So what we have to do is figure out how do we align this rapidly moving technology with the workplace, both in terms of an educating session as well as in a healthcare setting.
All right, thank you. Very, very interesting insight. That in academia, historically, we tend to focus more on the skill set, whereas Professor Colton is informing us that it is actually the mindset that is perhaps more important than the skill set. So, which is why in academia there is an emphasis that we should work on the attitude and skills as well as the knowledge part, right? And whereas historically knowledge has been the first and the foremost element that we have been focused on. Yeah, thank you for that insight, Professor Colton. So now moving towards the more applied side in the context of business regarding finance and investment, we would like to learn from Professor Zaremba. How do you see AI impacting the field of finance and investment management? And what are the potential opportunities and challenges for current and aspiring professionals of finance?
Thanks. Thank you for this interesting question. I think that first of all, it's important to say that AI is a huge buzzword in investment management that mainly is used to attract new flows into investment products. But when you look under the hood, that frequently boils down to just a couple of new algorithms or statistical techniques which are used, well, in different areas, and they matter, but they mainly concentrate right now into, let's say, 3 areas of investment management, because finance is obviously a very broad field, right? I would say first in data analysis and return predictions, second in practical portfolio implementation and then trading execution, and perhaps third in risk management, right? Now coming to return predictability and coming to predicting, starting with predicting returns, right? I think that we have witnessed a huge change in the investment industry over the last couple of decades. When you think about investment analysts, most of us most likely still see Warren Buffett or Benjamin Graham sort of person analyzing tons of different financial statements, having discussion with management boards, and trying to figure out whether some stock is undervalued or undervalued, and they should advise to sell it to the customers and buy it to the customers. Now, when I started career investment industry 20 years ago, it still largely looked like that. But I think that those times, if they are not gone yet, they will be gone soon, right? Now, first, over the years, we amassed huge amounts of data that actually allowed to practically or empirically test different strategies that before analysts implemented just intuitively. Now, and this way, in the 70s, we for the first time examined, I don't know, value effect in stocks, and documented that certain groups of stocks outperform others. Then in the 80s, we documented, I don't know, another pattern like size effect. And in the 90s, momentum appeared. So gradually, we documented more and more of this return predictive signals. It started in industry, academia followed, because this is the type of research that could be easily translated into huge bonuses and careers and publications. And quickly, over the time of, I don't know, 3-4 decades, from the moment when we thought that the markets are efficient and are predictable, we arrived at the moment when we had documented in the literature literally hundreds of different return predictors, and we weren't really sure how to find our way in this new universe. Now, and this is where machine learning, and I'm specifically using the word machine learning, stepped in, and this is just a matter of the last 5-6 years. Machine learning, which has its ability to first digest huge amounts of data, so it doesn't have the problem with crunching hundreds of different variables at the same time, that can select those which are the most important, so can differentiate the return predictors that matter from those data that does not matter, and finally that can capture different interactions, non-linearities, which cannot be really detected by the classical models. So, and pushing it beyond, actually, it turned out that those machine learning techniques can extract information from the places where analysts cannot extract them that well. They can read, write news, text. They can review statements and be in that more efficient, in fact, than traditional analysts. So I think we are in the process of undergoing huge change, right? And the investment management industry is in this regard is changing profoundly. And second, I think investment and trading execution. I mean, when you think about trading execution, you still see in your eyes calling a broker in white shirt, who just then calling and trading and making trades. Well, again, these times are already gone. 90%, 95% of trades are automatically executed right now in the market. And the vast majority of volume is generated by algorithmic trading. Now, and third, risk management. I mean, we still keep teaching the students Altman models, for example, to examine the credit risk, which were examined based on, 150 companies 60 years ago, and are based on 5 variables. While right now, I mean, even for a simple credit scoring of individuals, not even companies, we are able to digest much bigger amounts of data and detect things that are undetectable by a current model, by simple models. So AI is largely a buzzword. It comes down to just a couple of different simple new statistical techniques, but those statistical techniques matter, right? And they pose actually a lot of challenges, especially for investment and finance professionals, because they require from us completely new set of skills. I mean, we need to be much more skilled in data analysis, in programming, and if you think about professionals that were educated 30, 40 years ago, most commonly they do not have the skills, so they need to retain the ability to continuously learn and upskill and adapt to the new reality. And the second biggest challenge, I would say, that would be perhaps regulations, regulatory changes / ethical concerns, because when the portfolios are entirely managed by machines, you can say the question is who should be held accountable for problems, for mistake, and to what extent we can attribute it to the companies, to personalities, or actually to whom. Right. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So I get the sense that although IT has been there helping us in terms of various analytical tools and so on, so accuracy and quality of the inputs was already there. So AI can actually help us in improving the speed and dealing with the big data and analysis of the financial options and the portfolio and the risk management. All right, thank you. And building on the risk management, Mr. Ammar Habib has expertise in that area, and fortunately he also, being a professor of practice, has the insight about both the industry as well as the academia. So, Mr. Habib, as a practitioner, how do you see the adoption of AI by Pakistani businesses, particularly in comparison with the developed countries? And what challenges and opportunities are faced by Pakistani industry due to the emergence of AI?
So in terms of adoption, I think we're still quite a bit behind the curve. But I just feel that adoption is picking up, and it's mostly from the academia side, I would say more on the Gen Z side than anyone else. So you will see a lot of people, a lot of students essentially improving their workflows, improving the way they work, utilizing these tools. And when they go into the organization, when they start working, they bring those tools with them. So it's more of, I would say, a bottom-up push rather than something top-down. And when they do it, a bottom-up push, the old guard, I would say, that just starts getting shaky. So for example, I always give this example, maybe a bit crude, but AI is going to replace interns and analysts first before anyone else. Because all the low value added stuff, all the sifting through data, all the whatever just took a lot of time, all of that can be automated, simplified through various flows. So students, individuals are actually able to pick it up, utilize various tools, and just massively improve productivity. They, I just feel, would be positioned well to essentially disrupt a lot of things. And I would say this again, a lot of top-down approach is basically more, let's say, it's more just talking the talk rather than walking it. It's actually the bottom-up approach that really walks the talk here. So, I mean, this is a challenge for me in my classes as well. I see a lot of my students here. I gave them questions, their exam questions, or it can be an assignment. They turn to AI and get me the answer, and the question is structured in a way that the AI generated answer will be wrong. So yeah, the point being, instead of being fearful, instead of regulating, instead of saying this, we can't really do this, you can't do that, you got to embrace it. You have to see what needs to be done, how it can actually add value. Now, if I'm giving an assignment somewhere, I am going to give an assignment through which AI can be an enabler rather than be a blocker. So for example, I can ask someone, it's one of the assignments that I want to do, that let's say extract the price of, let's say, wheat per ton over the last 30 years from various sources. Now, if you know where to look, it will take a long time to actually go through this. But through the right tools, through the right structuring of that prompt, you can actually get that answer in a much quicker way. So again, as a number of participants have said earlier, productivity here massively improves. And when that productivity moves towards the industrial side, moves towards the industry, moves towards the corporate side, that just starts demonstrating its spillover effect. So I'll just come back to my earlier point. Instead of top-down, instead of something that is like being instructed at the board level, because the board will capture the buzzwords, but it won't really put it into practice. It is actually the bottom-up individuals who are really in the trenches who were really going to push it through. And this is for everyone essentially, whether you're academia, whether you're industry, you've got to embrace it rather than stifle it. And through actually embracing it, you would be able to add more value. Another thing I just feel it's important to mention here is that this number of participants mentioned it here as well, the over-reliance on AI. You cannot simply do that. You need to have that nuance, you need to have that understanding to differentiate whether whatever the output is that even the truth or not. does that even align with what the factual position is or not? Because as a number of professors here has said, you don't really know what the quality assurance of that thing is, whether that is even real or not. For example, I can say I want the price of petrol in third desert for the last 30 years. The data is out there. I know I can sift it through, but when I ask AI, it can just generate a random number for me. It is up to the nuance that I have to whether to believe that number or not and to do more investigation. So I think that is what will be a differentiating factor between those who just blindly follow different tools available and just regurgitate whatever outputs there, and those who can actually think, who can actually investigate deeper. That is really going to differentiate of who can actually really maximize the potential of AI and those who will just basically just regurgitate whatever's being thrown at them.
All right, thank you. And I was just wondering, for instance, Dr. Zaremba mentioned that AI is already a buzzword, right? So people know about it and people kind of find it fashionable to kind of adopt it. But that question of staying behind the curve, so then what is the problem? Is it the problem of the skill set or that of the mindset?
Hello. Yeah, it's not a skill set problem. If anything, you do not need a lot of skill set to actually do this. So that becomes a problem then, because A, you get lazy, and B, it also becomes a mindset issue. What if this is threatening me? So it's all about embracing the new technology versus considering something as a threat. If you consider something as a threat, you're going to do everything imaginable to essentially not let it evolve. But if you embrace something, you actually grow with that thing. So it's more of a mindset issue than a skill set issue. If anything, the skill set required to embrace this technology, I would say, is much lower, much less than what was required earlier. Or I'll just give a very basic example. If I had to do some web scraping or if I had to collect some data, the tools, the skills that I would need 5 years earlier would have been much more complex. But right now, a few lines of code using a few UI UX tools, I can easily do the same thing without programming anything. So yeah, the skill set, the requirement of a skill set has actually reduced, but the higher order thinking of how to think, how to get to your output, that is extremely important. So you cannot brute force your way into things. You have to really think the steps through now.
All right, so artificial intelligence might be there, but we still need human intelligence in order to make use of it and make productive use of it. And then learning that from the perspective of the student. Again, I would ask you, Ms. Malaika, that as a student representative, what do you see are the expectations and concerns of students regarding the emergence of AI, and how should universities address these?
Sure. So first of all, if I talk about the expectations, so students definitely expect better learning tools from the university. They would expect AI tools to be integrated with understanding complex subjects, with the research processes. Second would be career development. Students would definitely expect AI courses and trainings to be offered to them in the institute. These two are two different things. If I talk about the courses, I would mean one for those students who want to understand the computer language, who want to get into computer science, who actually want to understand the algorithms. By training, I mean not everyone is very familiar with AI. There's a certain way to deal with it, how to give the prompts to AI, how to get your work done. Because we need to accept it that AI is part of Gen Z. They do rely on it, they get their work done from it. So why not provide training to them to use it for the right platform? These are probably, I think, one of the two main expectations. Now, speaking of concerns, as Dr. Nora and Dr. Ammar already pointed out, so two things. One concern is about over-reliance on AI, getting basic stuff, basic tasks, day-to-day tasks done through AI. Second would be ethical use of AI. It's very important to understand that AI can also have a biased algorithm, and how a lot of companies in the recruitment system, they've integrated AI. So this is one of the other ethical consideration that is a concern. And thirdly, data privacy. So as Gen Z, we know how reliant we are on technology. We know how much we've exposed ourselves to all this. So it's very important to know how our data is being used, how it is being protected. So I feel these are some of the concerns which actually are really relevant to us. Now, speaking of what the universities can do, I think three main things. First of all, communicate very openly to the students how their data is being used, how the data is being protected, because soon AI is going to be part of the tools. Second would be AI courses to provide training, workshops, and courses to students, so they get proficient in this and they get an idea how to deal with AI instead of fearing for it. Lastly would be basically to design assignments in a very smart way. So one of our instructors, Sir Atif Murtaza, he's in the crowd as well, he's very smart when it comes to dealing with AI. The kind of assignments that instructors should give now should be something that AI, like Dr. Ammar mentioned, is used as an enabler, but we should not completely rely on it, but just get some support from it. For example, some of the assignments which we usually get are go and visit the company, make a case study for the company, make a diagram. These are some things which AI cannot do for us, so we're forced to go out and actually study for the project and actually work for it. So I feel like instructors need to change the way they're giving their assignments, and they need to accept this mindset that students will be using AI. So instead of thinking of ways that we will prevent the student or penalize them, come up with different ways in which they take support from AI, but they don't completely rely on it. So I feel through this way, students can also benefit from AI in the best way, and so can the faculty. So like I feel like we need to accept the change, and integrating it in our curriculum is one way through which AI can actually be integrated and we can benefit from it.
All right, thank you. So what you are suggesting is that as institutions and academia in general should embrace AI rather than fear it, and we should be using it more frequently in our assignments and evaluations and so on. All right, thank you. So quickly, due to the shortage of time, I would like to have a brief comment from each of the panelists. Professor Zaremba, what do you think are the key skills and competencies that finance and investment students and professionals need to have in order to stay relevant in this world?
Well, I would split them into like three major groups. First, AI or machine learning. I prefer much more this word, right? It's very quantitatively oriented, right? So those are mainly quantitative skills associated with statistics, econometrics, by also programming, right? Which is R, Python, and things like that. There are a lot of voices that recently that programming becomes less and less important with rise of AI. I think it's true if you want to stay behind the curve, but if you want to be ahead of the curve, it's still important to have those quantitative, strong programming skills. The second, I think it's already time when students need to start focusing on specialization within the field of AI. Textual analysis and large language models is something completely different than, I don't know, convolutional neural networks which are used for self-driving cars, right? So the field is growing, it's very big, it's getting specialized, right? So it's not really possible to embrace entire field of AI right now, especially if you are a finance student, if you're asking about a finance professor. But above all of that, I think the most important is the ability to learn, right? And to adapt to the changing environment, because especially this field is growing at a very fast pace. And once you learn the tools that were developed 2 years ago, they might quickly become useless because new things appear and keep appearing. So that's a general skill that would be useful for the entire life, the ability to learn and to adapt.
All right, thank you. Professor Colton, coming to you, you already mentioned that AI is already being used for instruction and training through simulations and so on. So we would like to have your perspective on, again, in a similar fashion, that what kind of skills are actually needed, which areas are going to be most influenced, and particularly in healthcare management and education, and what do we need to do?
So I think for healthcare, when we think about healthcare systems, we normally think about three things that we need our healthcare system to do. And one is around healthcare finance. And you know, most countries have still not quite got that figured out. So the way we pay is very fragmented. And often, you know, you go to a hospital and you're paying the doctor one thing and you're paying the hospital something else, and it can be very confusing. And we're also, in healthcare, ironically, many of the paying systems are focused on inputs, paying for inputs rather than outputs. So we see a real movement in healthcare around what's called value-based healthcare. It takes a much more patient output perspective. But the biggest challenge that value-based healthcare faces is this kind of fragmentation, complexity of the healthcare system. So this is an area I think that AI could be very important in terms of influencing, helping us shape how we cost and price healthcare, and then also for kind of budgeting, forecasting. So I think that that's really important. Then the second thing we need out of our healthcare system is access. We need to be able to access our health system in a timely manner. We need to have people who are, regardless of where they're at, when they need healthcare, it's there. And then again, AI through population health management, by understanding the data and analyzing the data and thinking about how we locate and what we locate where, we could be managing our healthcare system so much more efficiently. And needless to say, telemedicine is something that could be groundbreaking for rural areas. And I realize that in many rural areas, there's a digital divide. But even if we had clinics in rural areas where people could show up and be treated by the best doctors in the world through telemedicine, through the use of AI, we could really make a huge difference to society, its productivity, the health of our society, and its well-being. And then, of course, the third area gets to the quality of care. And again, we struggle with understanding what should be the benchmarks. You know, what should it actually look like? And again, AI would be very important. And I just want to make one last point. You know, we talk a lot about AI, you know, kind of replacing humans and replacing doctors or nurses or doing tasks. We're way off having those kind of capabilities with AI. AI is very much a tool that gives us and shows us relationships and collects information in a way. But at the end of the day, it's us humans who determine causality. It's us humans who have to then analyze it and critically analyze it. So by being able to use this as a tool to get us to a place where we can then come in and determine those kind of causal relationships and do that critical thinking, it would be a huge step forward for healthcare and hopefully help us eventually get the perfect health system.
Right, thank you. We have heard from students that we should be embracing AI and we'll try to do that. And what would be your advice that as researchers, should we also embrace AI for academic writing, particularly in drafting and editing papers? And what's your take on that as a researcher?
Well, I'm interesting because my generation of academics were the first where we took word processors for granted and like being able to type for granted. So I had a huge productivity advantage over previous generations. Now, however, so that led to more academic work coming out. However, the quality actually did go up. With AI, again, it's going to obviously rapidly increase the number of submissions going into a journal. I mean, the one journal edit, we're really handling close to 1,000 papers a year. And that's, however, there's no indication yet that AI is going to result in better quality papers. And there is a trust thing. I mean, the issue is, there are a few trust issues. The first is, how can you be sure it's not copying out sentences? And depending on your lecturer, will they be diligent enough to discover that 3% is actually, of 20 papers, is actually the whole essay being cut and paste job? Can you trust its made-up sources? Can you trust the results, in the results table, because it's much easier to falsify a plausible results table with AI. There's also something going around called nightshade. Now, you see, because what AI does is it hoovers up content. And the content is other people's intellectual property. It might be a paper somebody else has written. It might be the work of data janitors, but it's actually hoovering up a lot of other people's intellectual property. Now, a group of academics at Chicago have come up with this thing called nightshade, that if you embed it in a paper that goes on the internet and get hoovered up by AI, it will actually break the AI system. I'll give you an example. You must have all seen these novelty pictures, if you look at them one angle, it looks like an old woman, at the other way it looks like a young man. There's pictures like that. Now, you can have images which are a lot more sophisticated, but can embed contradictory information. And the short of the matter is, because I'm conscious of time, a student can say, write me an essay about cows, and you get an essay back on handbags. So, and Nightshade's open access. You can get us through the University of Chicago website. So bear in mind, you have that huge reliability problem.
All right, thank you. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you for your insightful discussion and contribution. I hope that it has enhanced our understanding, at least as far as I am concerned. My key takeaway is that academia actually need to ask, that we need to work on attitude, skills, as well as the knowledge part of this. And then, as Dr. Colton has mentioned, that it is the mindset that is more important than the skill set per se, and it is the human intelligence ultimately that makes the difference, right? So artificial intelligence might help us in increasing the productivity, but the quality part is always going to come from human intelligence. That's all from us. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Dr. Shafique and all the respected panel members. Please, a huge round of applause for all of them. Can we have a group photo here?